Good morning, everybody who's tuned in. Hope you're well. It's just 10 o'clock. Good morning to you. Hello, Ian. Hope you're well. Looking forward to seeing you. Golf course open soon. We're going to talk about that today as well, or the new protocols for you. Hi, Eugene. Hope you're okay. Good morning, Quentin. I've just responded, and I'm going to cover the protocol for the golf restart at Roehampton today. I'll do it a couple of times. I'll do it to start the session and then to end the session in case you have any questions which you'd like answering. Hope that's okay. How you doing, Gene? You okay? Good morning. Hope you're all right. Hi, Mel. Nice to see you. All right, it's 3 minutes past. We'll get started very shortly. Oh, yeah, it'd be great, Gene. It'd be nice to have you back out there. And you've been relaunched, Gene. You've attended every single session I've done, I think. So it's going to be a brand new, fresh start to golf for you. You're going to halve your handicap, I reckon. First competition next year. Single figures, love it. I'll buy you a bottle of champagne if you get there, Gene, as a thank you for tuning in every week and giving me some support. It has been quite weird. I've got to tell you, looking at the computer screen and talking to people. It's been very odd, really, but that's life. The new normal. Alrighty. Hey, Edgy. Nice to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, I'll give it 1 more minute. It's 4 minutes past now. I'll give it 1 more minute just in case anyone else is struggling to get on. Very good, Gene. And like I said earlier, I'm going to talk about the new protocols for golf at the club. So any questions about that, just let me know and I'll try and answer as best I can, further to the email from the club yesterday. I'm going to talk about wedge play today as well. And bunker play. Even though we're indoors, we can still talk about that. Alrighty. I think we'll get started. It's now 5 minutes past. Well, a very, very good morning to you. I hope you're pleased with the announcement the golf course is going to be open again, so Saturday. Now, I'm not a greenkeeper, but I have spoken to the greenkeeper. And the club was gearing itself up to probably be open on Monday, which I think is the 18th, isn't it? Is that right? Yeah, the 18th. And that was based on government advice and on advice from the collection of governing bodies for golf, which are England Golf, the R&A, BIGA, which is the Greenkeepers Association, and the Professional Golfers Association. And they were quite cohesive. They got together and they put together a list of concerns and needs for the golf industry in general to the government. They had one of the MPs working on their behalf, Minister of Sports, in that department. And so the information we kept getting from the governing bodies was it's going to be, at best, mid-May, late May, probably early June. Anyway, so then we had the announcement on Sunday night that golf would go ahead on Wednesday. And the greenkeeper, what he'd done is he'd grown the grass and let it knit, so he wasn't stressing it out at all. And then come Monday, when he thought it was going to be his first day of opening, it would all have been prepped for playing conditions for there. So Saturday's the earliest he can do that. And that's why Saturday has been chosen as the opening day, because you could go out and play there tomorrow, or today, but it won't be the same condition as you need, and then he won't be able to prepare it for the same condition that he needs. So that's my interpretation of events, how we've got to where we are, and that's how I understand it. And also, the place looks magnificent. And by the way, by the time you have your first game of golf, whenever that might be, the delay is all behind us, and then we can get on with enjoying our life. Now, in terms of the protocols, you've seen the email saying what the limits are for how many people are going to play. It's every 10 minutes, 9 holes only, 2 tees, first and 10th to start from. Now, what will happen is the marshal will stand at the flagpole. So as you leave the clubhouse or the car park and walk towards us, he'll stand at the flagpole. He'll have his starter sheet on the iPad, and he'll know who should be on the first tee, who should be on the 10th tee. Don't arrive too early, and there's going to be 6 stations on the putting green for members to put around, and you'll stay on that station. So you're only going to put from one station there before you go to the tee. Members playing off the 10th tee will go around the pro shop on the right-hand side, so in between the pro shop and the putting green path, around and then towards the 10th tee. And there'll only be golf traffic going one way on that path. That's from the pro shop to the 10th tee. The tennis players who are playing will also be using that access road as well. Players going to the first tee will be directed there via the marshal. and then he will call groups from the putting green and say, okay, it's time to go to the 10th tee or it's time to go to the first tee, as best we can. There'll be a pro outside the shop, likely to be me, and then possibly one of the assistants will be standing in the doorway to the shop, should you need anything from the shop, sweets, drinks, balls, glove, what have you, and he will we'll all be wearing the PPE equipment. He'll go to the shop, into the shop to get whatever you need, and then take your credit card. So there'll be a counter area there where you'll be 2 meters away from it, and we will take the credit card from it and deliver whatever you need. So it's very pared down, as you know, as you're aware, but the club is rightfully taking it seriously until further notice. So that's the protocol. You're signing up through Intelligent Golf. I think it crashed yesterday because it was so overwhelmed with what's happened. So anything I've missed on there, just let me know. To get to the trolley sheds, the marshal will guide you through down the side of the shop. That'll be cordoned off just for trolley shed users. If you want to hire a trolley from the shop, we're going to wipe them all down and disinfect them. And then once you've finished the round, there'll be 2 stations, one for disinfected and one for to be disinfected trolleys. The same goes for the buggies, the single seaters, and also for the electric trolleys. And I think that's everything really. You can play with members of the same household, and you can, if you're playing a 2-ball, it can be someone not from the same household, can't it? How soon ahead can we book? Check with Intelligent Golf on that one there. Lessons, thanks Ian. Marvellous, been nice to see you again. We're going to review that after the weekend, and the reason why we've not done that yet is we want to limit the amount of volume coming into the club. If we have, say, 6 or 7 pros coaching at the same time and doing half-hourly lessons, that just multiplies the volume of people coming in. So we're going to review that on Monday, and of course you'll be the first to know, Ian. So obviously it's been tough for the assistant pros. They don't have any income from the lessons while in the lockdown. The club have provided income for them to cover their shop hours, which they would have done. So thank you to Roehampton Club for that. And then we'll review it on Monday, and then the lessons will take place from there. We won't be allowed in here. This is too small an area. But we'll be able to use TrackMan outdoors. I know you want to have a go at it here. And that's a starting point. Now, my gut instinct, based on nothing other than my gut instinct, is that stage 1 will probably be obviously the messiest one, while we try and work it all out and cobble it all together. And I don't think that will sort of last forever. Obviously, I think that might be quite short. But stage 2, which might be a slight softening of the rules nationally, I think, this is just my opinion, not the Roehampton Club's opinion. Then the second stage is probably going to be the new normal, isn't it? And then stage 3, if we get back to what the old normal was, I'd be surprised personally. And that's based on just interacting with members on what their levels of comfort are with things. So that's how it's going to be. It is pared down. The advice we're getting from the R&A, from England Golf, from the PGA and what have you, is that they don't want any form of events or roll-ups or that sort of thing. They're trying to discourage clubs from looking like they're going back to normal and having group sessions in the group meetings in the first stage. So that's about that. Any questions on that before we get started? And like I say, I'm happy to run through that again at the end of the session for you, just to make sure everyone's comfortable with what I've just talked about. And then we're going to talk about wedge play today, and we're going to talk about bunker play today. So I'll give you 1 more minute if there's any more questions on that, and then we'll get started. If you look on the email, it talks about all the protocols on booking, how to book, what your limits are to book. The club is requesting sort of a fair usage policy, so we don't have people blocking off tee times 7 days a week. There'll be a limit. I was chatting to a golf professional at another very local club. I won't divulge. And what they've had is members saying, well, you can only book, say, 3 times in a week. And so what members have been doing is saying, well, if you and I want to play together, then I'll book 3 times, you book 3 times, we'll play together 6 times in the week. So I think there's got to be sort of some fair use policy. And I think as well, I think Roehampton Club is such a big club. They've got all the tennis players, got the people who want to use the gardens, all the golfers and what have you. We're one of the few clubs where you can play golf at any time. Lots of clubs have a starting time of, say, 7:30, 8 o'clock to allow the greenkeepers to work. Our golf course is very busy in the early hours, 6:30 around there. when I'm giving early morning lessons, it's not uncommon to see someone wandering down the 9th or the 18th. Alrighty, so if there's no more questions, we'll get started today. So a very warm welcome to the session today. And I want to talk to you today about wedge play. And I'm going to start in a slightly quirky manner here. Now, I'm going to show you here a table of the lofts of Callaway's latest range. So on the far left-hand side of the screen, it gives you the number of the irons, starting number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then pitching wedge, A wedge, gap wedge, sand wedge. Then you've got the loft, 18 degrees, 21, 24, 27, 31 and a half, 36, 41, 46, 51, and 56. And then just talks about the length. All right, so if you look at the set of clubs that Callaway are selling now, the 4-iron starts with a loft of 18 degrees. Now, just to give you an idea, when I first turned pro, and I'm 47, I turned pro in 1992, you'd have what's called a stock loft and a tall loft. So what the amateur golfers would use was the stock loft, and we'd look at the lofts on the irons, which would sit on the shelf, and every set started with a 3-iron. Most sets would have a 2-iron, and some would have a 1-iron with them, but every manufacturer would make a 1-iron, 2-iron, 3-iron, 4-iron, 9-iron, and then pitching wedge and sand wedge. What the manufacturers have done now, and just to let you know that a 1-iron on tour, the Tour Professionals 1-iron was 17 degrees. Now that 4-iron now of Callaway, I'm just getting the light properly for you, is at 18 degrees. So it's 1 degree difference from the 1-iron that a tour player would have used back in the 1990s. So think of Sandy Lyle, great 1-iron player, Ian Woosnam, great 1-iron player, all the heroes of yesteryear were using a 1-iron, which now amateur golfers are using a 4-iron. So what's happened there? Lots of things have happened there. The manufacturers, in an effort to get you all to hit the ball much further, have de-lofted the clubs. So they've taken all the loft off the clubs. Even the ladies' sets, they've done the same thing. And what they've then managed to do, and this is the sort of the alchemy, the wizardry, and Mel's on there, one of my engineers is on there. What they've managed to do then is put the weighting in the club around the very, very base of the club. So let's say a head weighs around about 270 grams. Then they're trying to put 220, 230 grams at the very bottom of the club, which means most of the weight of the club is under the ball, even though the loft isn't. So I'll just explain that to you. I take this sand wedge here that I've got in my hand. You can see all that loft there is right above the ball. So with the sand wedge here, we've got to make an effort to really get the club underneath the ball. Because if you look at the sweet spot of your sand wedge, this is why you thin them when you do thin them. If you look at the sweet spot of a sand wedge, it actually sits miles away from the ball, doesn't it? Now that ball's sitting on the sort of bottom 2 or 3 grooves, really. Now when we get a less lofted club, let me get one for you. When we get a less lofted club, like a 7-iron here, the sweet spot is much closer to the ball, because the loft on the face is moving to the back of the ball. And that's why we find it easier to contact flatter face clubs, not necessarily contact or strike them perfectly. But the reason why we thin and our chips and what have you is because the loft of the club is so far behind. So what the manufacturers have done now is de-lofted the club, so you get a much better contact. So let's say this 7-iron here in the olden days would look like that. It now looks like that. So the contact's easier, and that's why they put all this weight at the bottom of the club. Now, just to then give you some historical perspective on that, there is the king, Arnold Palmer. Now you look in his bag, he's got a 1-wood, a 2-wood, and a 3-wood. Now think of that, the most powerful hitter of his time. And there's Hogan, 10 years prior, with 3 head covers at least in his bag, and a massive set of irons. Now, if we then look at those irons, I want you to look how long the neck is on the club. So look how long the plastic, that's called a ferrule, that plastic thing there, the ferrule, that ties the iron up. It has no technical usage. But that long neck of the club, that was just the design. Now, the reason why modern clubs are so much easier to hit is that that neck is tiny now. Do you see? Old clubs were up here, therefore they had lots of wasted weight in the head. You don't hit the club, hit the ball from there. And so what manufacturers managed to do then is widen, make the soles bigger and the clubs bigger, and put all the way to the bottom. They take the loft off to give you power, they put all the way to the bottom to give you height. Now, as your friendly local retailer, I couldn't possibly say that you're being duped there, because you are hitting the ball further. However, what is clear is that if those lofts are corrupted as much as they are, it then creates this need to have a bag full of wedges. So you look at Callaway there, what they're basically saying is to start with a 4-iron, and then if you go down 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then it says pitching wedge, A wedge, gap wedge, sand wedge. That's before you even get into lob wedges. There's 2 lob wedges in the bag, 60 and 64. So by cheating the numbers on the bottom of the club and de-lofting the club face, they've created the need now for many more wedges in the bag. So really, how you should look at your the construction of a set of clubs is, let's say you start at 5, and you go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 is your pitching wedge, 11 is a gap wedge, 12 would be a sand wedge, 13 would be a more lofted sand wedge, and 14 would be a lob wedge. So that's how you'd look at the sequence of the set there. And the clubs that we're going to focus on today are my number 12, which is the sand wedge, and also number 14, which is the lob wedge. Here, now my lob wedge has a huge amount of loft, 64 degrees. When I first arrived at Roehampton 12 years ago, my most lofted club was 58 degrees. But the greens are so small here and they're so compact that I had to keep adding loft. So I've added 6 degrees of loft over the past 12 years to my wedges. And also during that time, the manufacturers have taken loft off the wedges. Now, if you look at Arnold Palmer's bag, like I say to you, a driver, a 3-wood, and if you look between the 1 and the 2-wood, you can see another wood head, can't you? So he has what looks like 4 to 5 woods in that bag. I think the head cover off the driver is off the driver, because we can just see the driver there. So why did the old pros who hit the ball so far need to load their bag up with so many woods? In 1969, when the Open was held at Lytham St Anne's, the golf course was just shy of 7,000 yards, and the pros were hitting the ball off the tee around about 220 yards. Modern pros hit the ball around about 300 yards. They've added, say, at least 40% to their overall distance. The golf course is about 5% longer. So the pros are hitting the ball 40% longer, and the golf course have increased in length by 5%. Carnoustie, in 1953, when Ben Hogan won there, was 6,900 yards again. And Hogan was hitting the ball 235 yards, and he was the longest player on tour. Now, being the long player on tour back then was all about accuracy of strike and quality of strike, as it is today. But they had to really hit fairways back then, because they didn't have rescue woods, they didn't have 7 woods, and their bag was loaded with a driver, a 3-wood, a 5-wood, a 1-iron, a 2-iron, a 3-iron, 4-iron, 5-iron, 9-iron, and 1 wedge. So Hogan's bag had 1 wedge called the equalizer. So the makeup of your set now is to have lots of wedges, a few irons, and lots of woods. So we have a driver, 3-wood, 5-wood, 7-wood, rescue wood, and what have you. Not many irons in the bag. So it tells you now you're going to have to become more dependent, if you want to get good at golf, on your wedge play. So let's get stuck into some technique now. If we look at my 54 degree here, underneath that says 0.8. 54 is the loft angle. Quite simply, that's angle from there to there. 0.8 is the bounce angle. It's how much the sole sits off the ground. Now, if we were playing at courses which were very fluffy, or had lots of sort of grass around the greens, and we had bunkers which were really deep, heavy sand, that 8 degree would be useless on the bounce. We'd need 10, 12, or 14. And the reason for that is as the ground was so fluffy and would give way in the sand, and as the long, shaggy grass, that rounded sole needs to be bigger and bigger and bigger so the club doesn't get stuck in the sand. If you go and play on the golf course on the coast, very tight turf, or even our approaches here have very tight turf, we want less and less bounce so the club can snuggle underneath the ball, and so we don't want that bounce there. So the bigger the bounce, the more likelihood the club has got of bouncing off the turf, which it needs to do, but you have to recognize the turf that you're playing on. On my 64 degree, that has 0.7, you'll see there, 64.07. So that sits a little more snugly to the ground. And the reason for that is, don't forget, the more loft that's on a club, the harder it is to make contact with it. Look at that. That's a bull's eye view, and it's terrifying. I mean, it gives me the chills just looking at it. You know, that club has to make an effort now to go underneath. So what we do know is that when we strike a golf ball, it doesn't actually fly off where we strike it from. It hits the face, rolls up it, and then departs. So the club gets struck, it rolls up, and then it flies off. And that's why we get those marks up the face on a wedge. If we look at the driver face, we get the splat mark. It's a big sort of, like a poached egg almost. Whereas with these clubs, because the club sits back, we make contact, it rolls up the face and then departs. Now you'll also note, and for all you shankers out there, I want you to pay super close attention to this, my strike pattern is not dead center. It's certainly not towards the heel, even though I have hit one or two shanks. For the most part, those last shots that I've hit are towards the toe area here. Now you'll know my famous Tony Jacklin picture. And if you want to quit being a shanker of the ball, then look at that. So Jacklin came to play here. I caddied for him. Look at the activity around the toe of that club. There's nothing around the neck, or the shank of the club, or the heel, but look at the activity. It's not anywhere near the center of the main activity. It's all towards the toe. So I'm going to cover shanking, duffing, yipping today. I know there's one yipper watching. I won't give the game away as to who it is. So what you're looking to do with all your wedge play is strike it off the toe end of the club here. The manufacturer's made loads of adjustments there for you. It's very deep, it's very flat, and it's nowhere near this terrifying shank part here. Also, if we look at the design, if we just snuggle the toe end of the club a bit more by lifting the club up, it just creeps under. If I do the opposite and lift the club up that way, it's terrifying. You're going to hit the ball terribly. So the toe end of the club is where you make the strike. Now, and this is where we get into the paradoxes in this game. The club shaft is designed to rest vertically, like that. But the bounce of the club means that we can lean the club slightly forwards. Now, when we lean the club slightly forwards, that, of course, takes loft off the face, we would think. Now, it does when it's static, but it doesn't when the ball leaves the club face, because what happens is as we swing down and strike, we know the ball rises up the club face before it leaves. And so its departing loft is not the same as its initial loft here, because the ball will rise up. Now, once it's been struck, the ball keeps rising. That's where the height and we'll get the backspin from. So in terms of your technique, the most orthodox way to do this shot, to play this shot, is to have the club shaft leaning slightly forwards at address. That then enables us to swing down a bit more to the ball. If the club is swinging down to the ball, it will get underneath it, as long as we go down and through. Now, if I just show you on here, I hit a previous shot. It wasn't too shabby, but you can tell I was brought up in the wind. You'll see in a second. Now then, here is my attack angle at minus 5.3. So my club head was descending to the ground by 5 degrees. So you've heard me talk a lot about the driver, how we optimize and bomb the driver. We need to place the ball forward in the stance, both the club left hip socket, and as we swing, we ascend, and we hit right underneath the bum of the ball to send it up nice and high. With a wedge shot here, and place the ball back in my stance on purpose, leaning the club forwards to encourage a 5-degree descent of the club head. So where I place the ball there means on the arc of the swing, the club is swinging down, net the ball, travel along the turf, slides along, and then I go through. So my arc is that. Where I place the ball determines the attack angle. Now I place the ball opposite my right instep here, lean the club shaft forwards, and I don't make too many thoughts about the swing. John Cardwell made a nice email to me saying, do you think about the difference in where you use the wrist and where you swing during the swing? Well, ideally not. If we place the ball in a variety of positions, there with the driver, there with the 7-9, here with the wedge, and try and make a similar swing, it'll feel different because the clubs are different lengths and different weights, then we should catch the ball in a different position and just make a different shot relative to the loft of the club face. Now, this is where yippers come from. A yipper is where the body freezes and the hands do this sort of thing. So the whole idea is a continuous flow. I was saying to the ladies yesterday in my class that I read a great piece on Dennis Pugh, who coaches Molinari. And what he says, Dennis Pugh, a top international coach, he said, what I'm looking for all the time is to teach flow. I'm trying to teach a set of positions which all join up in sequence and we create flow. Now, for the yippers out there, obviously you feel a lack of flow. So the club is up, down, along the ground and through. And so my rehearsal swing for all yippers is to literally say that. Up, down, along and through. So as I'm swinging down, I'm rehearsing the next part of the sequence, which is down and through. And that's why that exercise of doing that is a lovely one for your chipping. It keeps the arms in front of us. It forms this triangle shape here. And as we do that, we get the sense of the club sliding through the shot. You'll see on my VE Day video, which I did last Friday. I talk about all the different styles and quirky words the pros use to describe their games. And Lee Trevino is a fantastic one for this. And he talks about being a digger, a flipper, a slider, and what have you. What we're looking for with the wedge is that as the club swings down, we slide through. And that's why the sole of the club is called the bounce, because we want it to bounce or slide along the ground. Now, interestingly, in the olden days, all clubs were very, very bladed like that. As a consequence, when the players swung in the sand or any turf, that club would get stuck because it was so sharp, it just gets stuck in the turf. And Gene Sarazen was a very poor wedge player, relatively speaking, and very poor bunker player. And he was hitting some horrible shots in the practice range. And next to the practice range was an airfield. And he kept watching planes take off. And he kept watching the tail of the plane taking off. And that night he went home and he had a dream of a golf club being attached to a plane. And that's how the soul of the club there was created. So this dream was putting this golf swing in the tail of the plane. He knew he was onto something when he was watching the plane. He couldn't take his eyes off it. And you could see that bounce or sliding action. And it's still a very graphic image if you truly want to understand how the soul of the club interacts with the ground. What he then did, he fashioned a club with the very first ever sole. What he'd do is he'd carry his wedge upside down in his bag. And when it was time to play a bunker shot, his caddy would take it out. He'd hold his hands over the head, hand it to Sarazen, who would hold the head. He'd then play the shot with a remarkable amount of height and a soft landing, hold the head again, and put it back in the bag upside down just to stop other players from cheating and copying the design. But of course, they soon caught on. So you can't talk about your wedge play and the loft that you want to achieve without understanding how the sole works. I guarantee you the first lesson you should get on any wedge play is understanding how the sole of the club interacts with the ground. And that's why mats can be a fabulous training exercise, because they don't allow you to take divots. They encourage you to slide or bounce the club along the ground. It's called a bounce for a reason. It can be called a sole, a grind, leading edge, and what have you, but it's called a bounce for a reason. And words are so important. We see it all the time as coaches. Sometimes you as an amateur golfer and us as coaches really click onto a word. Now, our relationship with words is very interesting. It's how we sort of get that information into the system, really. So once we position the ball and we let the club slightly forwards, not too forwards, because then we take the bounce off the club and we get this action here, where the sharp, horrible, nasty leading edge part of the club gets stuck in the ground. And that's when you see people duff the ball only a few feet. So if your hands are too far forward, club gets stuck, the jitters take over, and you see the golf ball limping forward. So if we then go back, and again, this one's for the scientists now. If we then go back to the launch angle, that ball left my club face there at 32 degrees. So let me just hit another one for you with this 54 degree, and you can put it all into context. So the club I'm hitting here is 54 degrees. It's my sand wedge. You just let it slip off my mat here. So 54 degrees. Okay. And again, you'll see I was raised on the coast, nice and low for a wedge shot. Okay, so if it's an angle of 54 degrees, the ball launches at 33 or 34. So we lose roughly about a third of the natural loft on the launch angle. The landing angle, however, is 48 degrees. So we see the arc of my flight is low, and then it steepens as it comes down here. The turquoise lines here represent the optimum sort of flight line. Now I say I was brought up on the coast. I can't help but hit the ball low. And so on my optimizer down here, I can just show you, it's saying, well, look, the world's best players would hit 60 to 70 a foot of height. I'm hitting 54. So to optimize that shot properly and get more control, I should hit the ball a bit higher. Now I can't because that's one of my negotiables. The nature of the beast likes to hit the ball low. But what's interesting here is that it's showing a launch angle like that. As the ball rises and all that heavy spin, 9,500 revs of spin, that ball climbs and climbs and climbs. As it stalls near its apex here, that's when the arc steepens on the return to the ball. Now, the reason why I'm telling you that is that as we swing and strike the ball, it's the quality of strike rising up the face that creates the spin, and that's what helps the ball to elevate. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a slow swinger, if you're a fast swinger, the rules are the same. The same science applies all the time. So, in terms then of what the swing looks like from down the line, as you look at me here, Mel's asking me there, do I address the ball off the toe for a wedge? Absolutely, every single time. I spend most wedge lessons that I give getting people to hit the ball off the toe end of the club. Right from over here. If Tony Jacklin did it, what it is when Tony Jacklin came and played here, and I was caddying for him, I said he hit it off the wedge because of a Phil Rogers lesson. His eyes lit up because he didn't think I'd know about it. And it's something which I read about years ago, but I'd never been able to find any research on it. And so this lovely illuminating conversation from him telling me about the lesson which he received from Phil Rogers. Now, Phil Rogers was was a tour pro and one of Jack Nicklaus's closest friends. And in 1979, he said to Jack, Jack, your wedge play is terrible. Why don't I have a look at it for you? Gave him a series of lessons over the winter. And of course, Jack came back and won 2 of his major championships in 1980. And he credits his short game success to Phil Rogers, who has taught pros over the years. And we still teach his techniques today. So yes, Mel, because if you get, let me show you here. Based on what I said earlier, if I strike a golf ball from there, yes, it's not near the shank yet, but that ball will stand a very high chance of shanking because as I swing, you've either got a swing which is moving slightly that way anyway, and the ball will roll along the face and get off the neck, or as I said to you earlier, when the ball goes on the face, it splats into like a poached egg shape, and then as it splats on the face, if that edge there just nicks that round surface, hello shank. Now, if you want a bit of fun before you get back to doing activities, type in on YouTube Tiger Woods shank, Ian Poulter shank, and you can watch the world's best players hit a shank shot. It's wonderful. It's so reassuring to watch them hit it off the pipe. So yes, Mel, the manufacturers have designed the wedge to be big over here. The world's best players will often hit their wedge shots from over the toe over here. They certainly don't want to hit it off the shank of the club. The area is too small. It's not near the sweet spot, and you're near that round surface. You hit a sphere off a round surface. Hello, 45 degrees. So, from this angle here, down the line now, just going to show you something here. Again, this is quite advanced stuff now, but it's something which will help anybody's game. My face angle there was 4 degrees open. So as I struck the ball, it was 4 degrees open. Now, if you then look at how I address myself to the ball, I don't stand squarely. I aim left of target to allow for the fact that my club face should stay open as I strike the ball. Now, if we open a face, that has the impact of increasing the amount of sole that meets the ground here. So we increase the bounce of the club. Like that. You see? If I close a club face, we take loft or bounce off the club. So as I open the face like this here, I've got a little bit more chance of utilizing the bounce of the club. So because I want the club face to stay open during my swing with the wedge, that means the ball will stay on target, but I open the body to allow for that shape. So I'm corrupting the club. That one there is 1.6 degrees open. So by aiming left, I keep the loft on the club face, I keep the height on the club face, and I get a bit more spin on the ball. There's only 2 players you've successfully hit delicate chip shots with a closed stance. One of those was a Lafayette, and the second is Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods hits lots of chip shots off a closed stance here. Most tour professionals will aim left to keep the face open. There's a natural balance there. Keep the face open by aiming left. Those two players can keep the club face open by aiming right at target. It's just a comfort thing for them. So, if I then, one of the most common questions I get from amateur golfers is, how far should I hit my sand wedge? Not very far, really. If we go back to the makeup of your set, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is your pitching wedge, 11 is your gap wedge, 12 is your sand wedge, then really that sequence means that the power stops at around about the 8 or 9 iron. From 9 iron, 10 iron, 11, 12, 13, 14, that's when we're looking for distance control. So what we're looking to do there with a sand wedge, I mean, I'm swinging there, hitting that ball 59 yards, 60 yards, not very far at all. I can stress the club further, but I shouldn't stress the club further. So as I'm making my swing there, you'll see as I swing up, it's a reasonably full swing. It's certainly a complete follow through with the body. I turn through, but I'm hitting that ball 60 yards. And that's my pitching action there. That one has gone 57 yards. Now, if I'm talking to you and I'm not really paying super attention there, and I can get my wedge to go 56, 57 yards within a 1 degree of tolerance there, then that's great control for me. I'll be super happy with that tight control. So in terms of your setup, we place the ball slightly back in the stance, lean the club slightly forwards, and you should press a little bit of weight. Just press the tiniest amount of weight on that left foot. That encourages a bit more of a movement through the shot here. And it's quite interesting. When I was watching my VE Day video back, I watched all the videos back just to make sure, in case I made any howling errors. I always make 1 or 2. And it's quite funny, actually, when I do the short 2 or 3 minute videos, they're the hardest ones to do because they need to be a bit more accurate. So I can't sort of brush over a mistake. But when I'm watching the videos, the VE Day video, hitting like 13 or 14 different styles, every style, and I should have mentioned this, showed me moving forward. So as I face onto the camera there, there's a motion forwards. And that's one of the big keys to wedge play. If you're still trying to send the ball that way, you have to move with it. Now, some of the world's best players will move with it with a big turn, and some of them move with a slide and a turn. Either way, a turn around here, or pulling out that side behind, is a motion that way. A slide that way is another motion that way. So whatever you do, get through the ball. If you look at very good chippers, McIlroy is one of the good chippers. As he comes through, he really extends that arm all the way through. So how does this apply to bunker play when we're standing here? Well, it's dead simple. If I take my bunker wedge out here, all I want is height. Now, if I set myself up squarely, and I've got 64 degrees, and I make a full swing, normal swing, that ball jumps up in the air. Let's have a look at that on the screen for you. Again, I can't help myself, can I? It's 44 foot of height. It should be around about 55 to 60. The launch angle there was 44 degrees, and the return angle was 53 degrees. Now, if I just made a normal swing there, and this is one of the real secrets of the game. If I just make a normal swing with that wedge, it jumps up in the air and it goes, what did I say, 44 foot. So that's 15 yards of height. Huge amount of height if you think about it, really. And the ball traveled a total of 49 yards. So if we know that that lofted club hits the ball 49 foot of height, or 44 foot of height, 15 yards in the air, there's no bunker which is 15 yards high, and it goes 49 yards. If I was to make that exact same swing and catch a bit of the sand before the ball, you're going to hit the ball maybe 15 yards, but you'll still achieve an awful lot of height. It won't quite be the same height. So the point what I was saying to you there is don't overcomplicate your bunker play. And I'll give you a great example of that now. How many times does an amateur golfer get into a bunker on the fairway and they'll take out a 7-iron or a 5-wood or something, they'll stand there, they'll make a full body swing because they're trying to get some distance, they'll come down, they'll just catch the sand before the ball, they'll make a follow through to here, and the ball limps out 8 to 9 yards, a perfect soft diving bird flight for a greenside bunker, and it flops down 10 yards in front of them. What that proves is that most amateur golfers' swing speed, if you catch a bunker shot at the sand just before, you don't hit the ball 10 yards, 10 to 15 yards, and most greenside bunkers at 10 yards. So the irony is, again, another paradox of the game, is that when amateur golfers get in a fairway bunker and try to create distance, they make a full-powered swing and hit the ball 10 yards. When they get in the greenside bunker, more often than not, they get terrified of making a full swing and get scared here, fluff the ball a foot on the bad shots instead of going all the way through. So when I stand in here, there's a limit to how far I can hit the ball. 45 yards is about the absolute upper limit. I'm surprised it went that far in here, quite frankly. Is the absolute upper limit of that club. If I catch a bit of sand, I'm going to hit the ball 15 yards. And if you actually pace out most bunker shots, they're around about 18, 19 yards from greenside bunker shots there. So to be a good sand player, I definitely address it off the toe, Mel. Most certainly address it off the toe. Stand squarely, stand normally, and have a rehearsal swing. Pull the ball further forward in your stance, big key, that'll come back in a second. Have a swing, hit the sand. And if you do that, you'll hit the sand but lose the power. You get all the height on the ball. So there, I purposely hit the ground before the ball, as I would ordinarily in a bunker shot. And I hit the ball 26 yards with a height of only 26 foot. So that ball limped out, but again, 26 foot is high. Think about it. 9 yards of height. Now, when you're in the bunker, I assure you, stand squarely, place the ball further forward in the stance. Remember I talked about the arc of the swing? If I swing down and just catch some of the sand, the club then gets under the ball and it puffs the ball out nice and gently, nice and softly. And then you make a full follow through. Alrighty, so any questions about what we've talked about today? And would you like to run through the protocols again, or do you have any questions about wedge play or questions about protocol? And just think I'm going to be seeing you all soon. Any questions that you have for me on any topic? Anything we've talked about? So you're going to do the booking online via Intelligent Golf, and that system's up and operational again. You'll come to the club no more than 15 minutes before your tee time. The car parking will be asking members to try and park in alternate spaces to give yourself space between the cars. You then walk to the first tee. The marshal will be stood at the flagpole, and he will direct 2 balls, 1 balls to probably the first hole, and then 2s, 3s, 4s, and 1s. Be a bit of a mix for the 10th tee. And the reason why we said about doing a mix is that it's going to be slow. When I first came here, I was adamant that we shouldn't have a 4-ball teeing off at 9 o'clock and then a 2-ball teeing off at 9:05 off the first tee. That's why we split the tees up, and it does help us monitor. It does help us get some flow to the course. That's why competition's always off the first. So there will be some times where the 9 holes will be slightly slower if you're a 1-ball or a 2-ball and you are playing behind a 3 or a 4-ball. But you know, given what we've been through the past few weeks, 9 holes out in the sunshine on a beautifully presented golf course is going to feel like heaven anyway. And as long as we just do that sort of frame of mind for it, I think we'll be fine. There's going to be lots of PPE being worn at the club. There'll be lots of disinfectant to wipe stuff down. And like I said, we are taking that aspect of life very, very seriously indeed here. Alrighty, any more questions for me? Anything you want to talk about? Oh, does the wedge shallow on the downswing like the other clubs? Yes, it does, Mel. Most certainly. What Mel's asking me there, and if you think about it like this, Mel, I'm going to show you something very graphic now in terms of why that's so. If Mel's asking me, does the club swing down and shallow on the way down here? So it swings up at that angle, swings down that angle. So let me change that. There. One of the best descriptions you can have of how the wedge works in the swing for bunker shots and for normal wedge shots is we move the club around the body. And if I do that around the body, I've got every chance of cutting underneath the ball. And that's why when you see good bunker players, oftentimes they get right down, they get very low down here. If I was to play a trick shot and really flop the ball up in the air and get underneath it, I get very low to the ground, because that encourages a swing around here on the return to the ball. So yes, no, every swing. If you show the club on every swing, you're going to be fine. Good question, Gene. What I was going to do is I'm going to do a session on Friday, short game session on Friday. That'll either be a posted video at 10 o'clock or a live session. I'm not sure yet. Saturday, I'm doing a 9 o'clock deep dive, but the golf course is open on Saturday. And then what I'll do, I'll review it from there. I've said to the club I'd love to carry on doing the online tuition, but it'd be a slightly different format. There's no point doing it when the golf course is busy on a Tuesday morning. But I'd like to keep going with the live session, so it might well be a sort of 4 o'clock or a 5 o'clock or an evening thing, once a week or something. But I'll go from there. So we don't really know what the future is going to look like as of Saturday anyway. So I will definitely be doing some form of online tuition. I've really enjoyed it, but of course, if you're all going to be here, there's no point talking to nobody. Alrighty, is there any other questions? Are you quite happy with the protocol? I think Tristan's your man to speak to regarding any of the bookings and the queries you may have on online intelligent golf. I don't see us going back to competitions or regular formats anytime soon, if I'm honest with you, judging what we get from the PGA. It's a bit of a moving feast, stuff changes quite frequently, but I'd say that's where we are right now. And I've enjoyed having you there, Gene. Thanks ever so much for tuning in. Really been a pleasure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much. Hopefully see some of you within the next few days. Good luck to you all. I hope you keep well, and see you soon. All the very best.